Welcome. The Abrams Ingle Institute for the Visual Arts, also known as AEIVA, is a visual arts center located on the campus of the University of Alabama at Birmingham. We are UAB's art museum. We present 8 to 10 exhibitions a year, highlighting a mix of regionally, nationally, and internationally acclaimed artists focused almost exclusively on contemporary art. We serve a diverse audience of university faculty and staff and students, but also artists, museum patrons, and donors. We help represent the visual arts to UAB. We help represent the visual arts at UAB to local and regional institutions, but also the national and international art community, while simultaneously striving to keep our exhibitions directly relevant and engaging to our surrounding Birmingham communities. Since opening in 2014, AEIVA has been featured in publications such as the New York Times, the Huffington Post, The Nation, Raw Vision Magazine, and PBS Canvas. And we are very proud that our exhibitions and related educational programming are free and open to the public. So a few quick housekeeping notes before I get started. On your screen, you can see some slides rolling for upcoming events, all hosted by the visual and performing arts entities here at UAB. Especially want to draw your attention to the upcoming Outside the Lines Coloring Night featuring graduating seniors of UAB's Department of Art and Art History Bachelor of Fine Arts program. And this coloring night happens in 2 days, on Thursday, on April 1st. So be sure to register for that. Again, all of our public programming is free, so go ahead and sign up for that. And to any UAB students out there in the audience, keep an eye out for our upcoming Student Arts Council Visual Arts event to be announced here within the next week. It will happen a little bit later here in April, so just keep an eye open for that. Our partners over at Al Stevens Center have several live stream performances coming up, including a free performance by Red Bradt on April 1st. And our partners at the Institute for Arts and Medicine have several great events coming up this April. Art Play continues its popular online Lunch and Learn series, with which will feature a virtual yoga session on April 7th, and lots of great things coming up in April for all of our entities, so just keep checking out our website for more information. Now, on to tonight's events. Just a quick note that this is being recorded, but the recording is going to be largely the screen shares. So I want you guys to feel comfortable to leave your cameras on if you would like, or during the readings, you can turn them off, and then at the end of each reading, if you would like, there is a way to do a sign language for applause, which is this. I saw a few people doing this earlier, so you're welcome to do that at the end. But I want to remind you about the chat box at the bottom of your screen, which is a wonderful tool to have, so you guys can use that to send any praise or congratulations or love, positive vibes to any of the poets for tonight's readings. You can also use the emoji reactions as well. But we do ask that you remain muted throughout the event, but that at the end of the readings, we will have time for a Q&A. So there are 13 poets here tonight, so we'll have 13 readings, and then after that, we open up for Q&A. However, you do not have to wait to the end of the readings to ask your question. As a question pops into your head, go ahead and write it in the chat. I will keep track of these questions and ask them for you at the end of the reading. So even if we're in the middle of the Q&A session and you have a question, just go ahead right into the chat, and I'll just ask those as they come to me. Great. So for tonight's event, this is a set of poetry written by 13 very talented students from the Department of English's Creative Writing Ekphrastic Poetry class. I'll get there in a minute. Each poet visited AEIVA earlier in the semester and were inspired by a piece of artwork in our exhibitions currently on display at AEIVA. The galleries are unfortunately closed to the general public at the moment, but you can see these exhibitions online. However, so you can see them online in a virtual reality tour experience on our webpage, but I thought I would give you guys a quick overview of them before we get started. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. And can all see that? Great. Okay. So first up is going to be Shona McAndrews. So this exhibition is up on display until May 1st, and it's called Shona McAndrew Wednesday Night. Wednesday Night is an installation by Philadelphia-based artist Shona McAndrew. Utilizing sculptures and paintings, Wednesday Night presents a representation of women not often experienced in visual art or popular media. Moments of private, personal banality not intended to be viewed by strangers. McAndrew's multidisciplined artistic practice draws on her personal experiences as a plus-size woman and her own struggles with society's expectations of womanhood. The slightly larger-than-life figures are modeled after the artist herself or her friends and are presented partially or fully nude, unembarrassed by their exposed bodies and carefree from the viewer's gaze, even the female gaze. They challenge or even dare the viewer to acknowledge and accept the intrinsic beauty of every woman's body. Shona McAndrew holds an MFA in painting from Rhode Island School of Design and a BA in psychology and painting from Brandeis University. So that exhibition is up on display until May 1st, but I would like to say all of these exhibitions will be available for a few months longer on our website as well. Great, so up next we have Lucas Blaylock in Telephone. Lucas Blaylock uses both traditional and modern photographic processes to exploit the inherent artificiality of photography to present constructed representations that reveal deeper truths about our own existence. Referencing the history of photography, visual art, avant-garde theater, and surrealist filmmaking, Blaylock's work is an evolving conversation with itself about humanity's current culture of imagery and simultaneous dilution and strengthening of modern photographic imagery. The title of this exhibition, of this AEIVA exhibition, Lucas Blaylock in Telephone, humorously breaks the metaphorical fourth wall by announcing the artist's own starring role. In its naming, Blaylock draws conceptual inspiration from the classic children's game Telephone, in which a group of children pass along information to each other through a series of one-on-one whispers until the message has evolved into something unrecognizable when compared to the original message. The artworks on display, not easily classifiable as either photographs or paintings, engage in an ongoing whispered dialogue with each other, resulting in a playful and sometimes unsettling series of misinterpreted appropriations of themselves. This concept evolves into a visual deconstruction of our culture's desensitized and convoluted relationship with photographic imagery, as well as the way we consume and digest visual information in the 21st century. Lucas Blaylock received his MFA from UCLA in 2013 and currently lives and works in New York City. Exhibition is up at AEIVA until April 3rd, but again, that virtual reality tour is still up on our website. Last but not least, for this particular exhibition, we have Jordan Eagle's Can You Save Superman 2? LGBTQ plus rights, health policies, body autonomy, and saving lives are all on the line. The implications at this moment in time are severe. Even during a global pandemic with massive blood shortages, the FDA continues discriminatory policies for donating blood and plasma based on sexual orientation. Can You Save Superman 2 is a dynamic, responsive exhibition by artist Jordan Eagles, whose ongoing cycle of art and activism addresses the stigma of queer blood and challenges these policies. Can You Save Superman 2, guest curated by Andy Warhol scholar Eric Shiner, travels from the Leslie Lohman Museum of Art in New York City in a new iteration here at AEIVA. This exhibition, on view through World Blood Donor Day, which is June 14th of this year, takes a hybrid form, displaying works physically in the gallery and simultaneously online in a virtual exhibition. For this new series, Eagles appropriates vintage comic books whose iconic characters are situated within storylines that revolve around blood donation, healthcare, HIV/AIDS, racism, and stigma. Eagles pairs the comics with blood donated from members of the LGBTQ plus community to reframe the narratives, providing new ways of addressing the current crisis. Jordan Eagles lives and works in New York City and has been exploring the aesthetics and ethics of blood as an artistic medium since the late 1990s. This is Jordan's second show at AEIVA. His first, Blood Equality, in 2017, was a joint exhibition with the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. I also want to point out that even though our fourth exhibition is not featured during tonight's poems, that we do have another one on display, and that is the 45th annual juried student exhibition co-hosted by the Department of Art and Art History. So be sure to check all of that out on our website soon. So now, without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share and turn it over to one of our tonight's hosts and leader of these talented students, Associate Professor and Director of Creative Writing in the UAB Department of English, Adam Vines.
Yay. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled for everyone to see my students and see the work that they produced. I'm really proud of what they've done all semester long, and it's a difficult process to work from visual art and try to recreate that through language, which is the definition of ekphrasis, which is a Greek term. Ek, out, phrasis or phrase, out of speech. So the artist or the writer is recreating visual art through speech in the oral tradition, and we're doing it through both the oral tradition and through writing. Maybe I'll go ahead and start with giving you the prompt that I gave them. In my pedagogy and in my writing sensibility, I believe in prompts, and I believe in draconian prompts. And this was one that wasn't nearly as draconian as some of my other prompts, but I feel like it's my duty to make my students uncomfortable, that they don't need to come in with a preconceived notion of what they're going to write. I'm trying to draw them out of their default modes, draw them out away from their initial impressions and make them question those initial impressions. I'm a firm believer that form, traditional form, and some of these guidelines, rigid guidelines that I give them don't restrict creativity, but enhance and broaden creativity. So for this particular exercise, I had them write a draft that was 24 to 30 short lines, no more than 6 syllables per line. The first line of the draft must begin with a coordinating conjunction. So I was forcing them through syntax and through part of speech to jump in the middle of the action. You must use bicuspid as a noun, ossify as a verb, and stippled as an adjective. Those are odd words, and maybe they do come out of that that tormented and cruel pool of language that I pull out for my students. But I feel like all of those had some connection to what we were looking at after I first looked at the exhibition. Also, I think you'll find that most of these writers kept that language in their drafts. You must create some meta-poetic moment where the speaker moves their attention outside of the artwork to a seemingly mundane sensory detail in the gallery for at least 5 lines. That's my belief also, that we've got to go beyond the mere contents or what's embodied or encapsulated in visual art, that we need to stretch the frame and that we need to have some interaction with the speaker. And in that meta drama, when they step inside and then step outside of the poem, then we gain greater insight and we have more layered language. You must attribute the artist and artwork title below the title of your draft. And then my last, number 6, which they never seem to do, which most artists seem to do too often, put your name on the draft. So they don't seem to take responsibility for their drafts often enough, and I'll print them out and then have to guess who wrote them, which isn't that difficult once I've had a couple of classes or I've seen a few of their poems. So yeah, that was the prompt for the piece, and I think through the first draft, everyone had a fairly strong draft, but after the first draft, I allow them to drop any of these requirements. So you're going to see that many of these poems don't have or have more than 6 syllables per line. Some of them have dropped those word requirements. Some of them don't begin with a coordinating conjunction, but a number of them did keep those guidelines and restrictions because I think that we all realize that that brought out the greatest creativity, was trying to find use of those words, trying to wrangle with that language within the context of a visual influence model. So I thought I would ask a question of some of my students instead of me kind of rambling on, so you can get a global impression of what they were wrangling with. I'd love for a couple of you to talk about the struggles you had with trying to meet the requirements of my prompt and give an impression of the painting, and how many of you moved away from this prompt, and how did you move away from the prompt? Many of the writers kind of lost sight of the visual art all the way, and it moved in another direction. Other people firmly grounded the poem in the art, where it became text instead of subtext. Those flipped as people went through different revisions that I saw with them. So who wants to talk a little bit about the writing process of writing through some of these drafts?
Well, Adam, do we want them to think on it, and then we can start off our Q&A with that one?
We could do that. Sure, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, well, do you want to do you want to read out who we've got for?
I'll do that. Yeah, I think I've got 13 students here. Palavi is here. Raise your hand when I call your name. Shannon. There's Shannon. Molly. Bree. Pate. Katie. Jaclyn. Ryan. Emily. I hope Emily's here. William. Brooke. Natalie, and Meridith, who is our lone grad student in the group. Everyone else is an undergrad student.
Great. Thank you, Adam. And Amanda, we can go ahead and see the readings. And don't forget to drop your questions into the chat if you have them.
Hi everyone, my name is Palavi. The title of my poem is The Difference Between a Moth and a Butterfly, and it's based on Lucas Bullock's The Guitar Player. I am harmony's bicuspid valve, he said. Then he pried a length of astroturf from the fairway between the 9th and 10th hole of the mini golf maze and pulled it up against his sternum. I am the saint and the sinner, the guitar player and the rapture within the musical anhedonia. I am everything you cannot see. Plucking the blades of turf like a guitar's throaty sixth string, he untangled the symphony sonata, then crescendoed into an allegro. He belted out like a sleight of hand, then, as if a trivial onlooker had robbed him of his greatest illusion, stopped and said, "The funny thing about being a moth is, of course." He stopped again, cleared his throat to keep it from ossifying like cartilage turning to conch shells. I could stipple paint onto my wings. Alternating shades of green, red, and yellow on each inner space glide to the other monarchs, mimic the rise and fall of their wings. He rolled up the cuff of his sleeve, approached the verge of a stammer, held his breath for a zeptosecond, and went on. Cement myself to the waterfall of noise, a cascade of each flapping wing rubbing against another, and remold myself into the forewing, hindwing, thorax, and abdomen of a butterfly instead. But I don't, he said. I don't.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I'm a junior creative writing major, and I wrote this for our ekphrastic poetry workshop. Quota after Our Blood Can Save Them by Jordan Eagles. I'm sweating gas station coffee and estradiol metabolites because our 5 p.m. poetry workshop catches me yawning at 4, and this glass-walled campus art gallery is a greenhouse in the leveling beams of sundown's skinned kneecap. I lean and peek at the placard beside Eagle's print, which offers materials, screen-printed blood of a transgender service member. Rusty pinpricks, long since oxidized, arranged in a matrix a la comic panel halftone, coagulate into a GI clutching his scalp like Rodin's thinker, if empty-headed or mad, still brandishing his bayonet, its blade lopped short by a careless margin, as though it's immaterial who gets gutted. I pass my finger over the crook of my elbow, now tattooed with a lotus flower, its aubergine petals obscuring the ruins of another war I'd rather forget. Would you bare your forearm and ball your fist without asking why America needs all this blood?
Hi, my name is Meridith Beretta. I am a first-year graduate student, and I study English literature and creative writing. I am in Adam Vines' ekphrastic poetry class, and I will be reading a poem I wrote based on Shona McAndrews' piece, Me and Stu Brushing Teeth. So here we go. To do Monday night voyeurism. Her papier-mâché thumb pops the elastic band of his blue Hanes as she cuspid clamps her toothbrush. She notices me, notices us all staring and watching, waiting for an expected I love you. But this isn't VJ Day in Times Square or Leander drowning in Henspot. It's Monday night garlic bread breath and a small embrace because she avoided the mirror. Again. These layers of flour and water crushed together like his head was between her thighs an hour ago. They dimple and ripple in this awful overhead light. Supposed to see them. We aren't supposed to see them, and here they are on display, and us unable to look away. Some of us are thinking, how did she let herself go? With a smirk. Proud. I learned in 2nd grade, you laugh at what you become, and when she looks at me, looking at her, I want to tell her to fuck her boyfriend with the lights on and her shirt off. But I can't say anything because we aren't supposed to be here, watching and waiting. Even if I could muster a noise, I wouldn't, because she's only papier-mâché. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Molly Brown, and I'm in the 429 ekphrastic poetry class. I'm a senior here at UAB, and I'm a psychology major. Onto my poem, I based it off of Young Mom in Rome by Lucas Blalock. My title is Silhouettes and the Art of Wishful Thinking. But even with doorway hollow, I can still make out your too tall frame, amidst the floaters and stippled fingers detached, wayward from you. You threaten every archway, and now you'd take the beacon exit sign, green heavens above my cowlick, with its narrow-shouldered T, and send it running for the hills. That fan would blow a less ossified creature away, but you're always so wired, stiff in your bones, glued stubborn to a place you've never been. Sleeve and bicuspid sleeve raised above your head, dwarving bookshelves and bar stools. You chide me like you're not in Rome or in nowhere. My overactive periphery strikes again. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brianna Carnley, and I'm a junior at UAB. My major is English with a concentration in creative writing, and I am a part of Adam Vines' ekphrastic poetry course. My poem is titled Tinder Date Cleanup, and it is inspired by Louisa by Shauna McAndrew. So I peel off the lime leaf sheets, stippled with sweat and lube. Uncovering the full-length mirror, I slip my arms into my robe, then stop before tying the sage sash around my hips. Once again, I can't look away from me. His eyelash shines amber on my raw bottom lip, indentions from his bicuspids branding my throat, chest, and stomach. I forget every time that I am just one in a miscellany of ones. A concrete gallery fills with art history students. The man in gray sweatpants marks the rosy knees, matching my cheeks, and puffy bra marks carved under my armpit. The petite blonde in a black blazer eyes my hastily stuffed dresser, crowned with a perky rubber plant. Drawers gush over with barley white socks and newly creased watermelon sugar underwear. The others note my yarn hair, greasy from sweat and days without washing, my fingers swallowed by my stomach. If only I'd known I would have visitors today. The woman, weight on one leg, the other bit in front of her, like me, sees only the tiny spiderweb crack on the first extra-large tile. She stands off to the side, stiller than me, as if the unexpected one added last minute to this miscellany. Thank you.
My name is Pate Fullerton. I'm a junior. I'm majoring in general studies, and I am in Professor Vines' ekphrastic poetry class. The title of my poem is You're Still Here, But You're Gone. But even if I try, I won't ever forget. You won't ever go away, even though you're already gone. This record plays over and over again, driving me crazy and keeping me sane. It stays in a glass case, unmovable, and it can't be touched. I don't want it to stop, ever. I just wish the singer could sing to me. I wish I could see a mouth move while my ears hear a beautiful song. My brain is stippled with pictures of your face. I can feel everything but your sweet embrace. The bicuspid of you and memories of you are so far apart. I can see you if I just close my eyes, but I'll never feel you again. This record spins, ossifying my thoughts to only my memories of you.
My name is Katie Hargett, and I am a senior English major at UAB. I am in Adam Vines' ekphrastic poetry writing workshop. My piece is titled Intuitive Eating. Intuitive eating. Or pink or white orchid, striated and bulbed, whirling like a can opener, serrates my reflection's many blades. Everywhere what must be lip or strangler vine. A wishbone presses its red absence to tissue, while a chival inkjet eats its stifled shadow. The dietitian says, you cannot diet out the moon without also dislocating the tide. But how stubborn the thin shape of that ache, that pink-slit prairie, where I rehearsed starvation in its backtracking ecstasies. Hunger ossifies at the root and wets the gut into a garland of tripwires. But you'll have to eat sometime, the dietitian says. So I put my finger in my mouth, bicuspids gnarling at dreams of wheatgrass.
Hi, my name's Jaclyn Hogan. I'm a senior English major in Adam Vines' ekphrastic poetry class, and my poem is titled, What the Fuck, Incredible Hulk? So Hulk doesn't save his friend. The same guy who saved his cousin made Jennifer Walters into the savage She-Hulk. Let's Jim Wilson die of AIDS. I am thinking about how it would feel to have radioactive blood while the sky outside ripens like a plum. Why can't we have a black, gay, gamma-powered hero? Hell, if Hulk's blood cures AIDS, let's have a bunch of them. If we can have Red Hulk and Red She-Hulk, if Rick fucking Jones can be A-Bomb, if Hulk can have a half-alien son named Scar, then give me a badass, queer, irradiated super team. Let me read about their adventures. Let the guy at the shop with the leaky AC unit recommend me their book instead of the one with the time-traveling rapist. They could be called Gamma Squad, Smash Masters, or the Radioactivists, featuring the mighty bicuspid who chomps foes in half, the ossifier who tunes bad guys to brittle bone, and the cover of their comic book will be anything but black and red and so goddamn sad.
Hello, my name is Ryan Howard, and I am a senior at UAB majoring in English literature. I am with the Acrostic Poetry 429 class. The poem I'm reading today is called The Tuesday Morning Routine of Someone Who Hasn't Showered in 5 Days. It's inspired by Shannon McAndrew's Caroline. Or maybe this is the only thing you can make yourself do today. You could not skip the shower. Your hair was sticking to your neck. The deodorant was no longer working. It sat in white clumps smelling of unwashed rind. The decayed incense was stapled to your skin, like the thin layer of grease behind your gnarled knees. The cold porcelain wakes you up just enough to stick your toothbrush in. The breast resting against your arm reminds you that you are contained within your skin. You ossify there, taking care of a body you don't even want.
My name is Emily Howell, and I'm a senior majoring in English. I'm currently in English 429, Acrostic Poetry, and this is my poem called The Milky Way. And the planets are still there, the bicuspids of a hungry areolan solar system. Puckered flesh struggling against her hands. Put me down. Peach-whipped constellations swim across her nipples. She's alone tonight. We are a room full of people considering those nipples. Outside the gallery's plate glass windows, a circular haze of pink-rimmed sunlight balances on the horizon. If she could ossify her breasts and chisel them from her chest, she would. Perhaps a poke and pull operation, a solar system folded in half and twisted into spirals. She looks down at the stars. She's alone tonight.
Hi, my name is William Jetter. I'm a senior at UAB studying English literature. I am in Adam Vines' Express Poetry Workshop. This poem is inspired by Shrimps and Peanuts, as well as Coffee Pot by Lucas Blaylock at AEIVA, and it's called Cards for a Pittance. My grandfather always left peanut shells scattered like pulled bicuspids across that checkered tablecloth, with the edges worn, tired from resting arms. He liked his coffee black, with a few grounds that got stuck in his teeth. Those shiny, sharp angles of the stovetop coffee pot used to scowl at me. I hated the thing. It burped and steamed and leaked when he poured us both a cup. He would sit down and deal a hand of cards while I held the bitter juice in my mouth, smiling, forcing a gulp. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brooke Rosas, and I'm a senior here at UAB, majoring in history and English with a concentration in creative writing. I'm a humble member of Adam Vines' Acrostic Poetry class. The title of my poem is Every Has Its Day, after Lucas Blaylock's Untitled Hot Dog. But they aren't boiled, because if they were, they'd lack that look, that plastic Barbie doll leg luster. These have swigged high noon sun, the I ain't paying over 2 digits for some damn lotion kind of blistering. Stippled pockets of briny extract that stick around and spit on white Egyptian cotton. Some say a hot dog is a sandwich, but on the glazed concrete, smoked Franks pool and ossify like deboned feelers bare in December, like bicuspid boot lugs, thick and yellow stitched, absorbing the refrigerated ground. Hip hopped for flair. Thank you.
I'm Natalie. I am a senior neuroscience major in the EH 429 poetry class, and this is my poem on hobbies, self-care, and other things I won't do, based on Floor of One's Own. But this isn't even as bad as it gets. There's a difference between being depressed and dampened, premeditated between the bicuspid of I'm fine and I'm fine. I know it looks rough, but it's working for me, because the black vibrator next to the phone with two faded socks curling around is in the moniker of efficiency. Hair ties ossify on the petrified and stippled wood, like the Cheez-It crumbs stuck to my lower back, etching me into a grayscale monotony. Inhale, sleep, fake it, repeat. Frida's been scowling since the last time I fingered a minuscule drop of golden dopamine, and I could clean the sticky coat stain on the nightstand, the prodding sticks of graphite under the desk, could find the will to conceal the consistency of black and white, and that isn't even as bad as it gets.
Thank you, everyone. That was really great. I know I enjoyed it, and I'm sure it looks like a lot of other people did as well. So what we can do now is, Adam, would you mind repeating your prompt and then have a couple of students answer? Oh, and you're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is the prompt, and as you'll hear, many of the students worked away from the prompt, but I think a number of elements that you'll see repeating are the forced words, and I think they found unique ways to use that language, and it created different contexts for their poems. The first one is the draft must be 24 to 30 short lines, no more than 6 syllables per line. The first line of the draft must begin with a coordinating conjunction. You must use bicuspid as a noun, ossify as a verb, and stippled as an adjective. You must create some metapoetic moment where the speaker moves their attention outside of the artwork to a seemingly mundane sensory detail in the gallery for at least 5 lines. Those are really the main requirements that I had. So who wants to tell us about how you struggled with that prompt maybe, and how you learned to live with it, either through a second draft where you discarded everything that I asked you to do, or what you decided to keep and what you decided to discard, and for what reasons?
It was pretty rough. Because you give us all these words and you can't just use them like the dictionary defines them. You can't use them like they're supposed to be used. And that's kind of how you make us uncomfortable. We can't use them in the conventional way. And so not only are we having to write with these words, but we're having to take this piece of art and write on it and find a way to wedge these words in a way that people aren't going to expect. And sometimes it really works, and then sometimes you stare at the computer screen and cuss yourself out because you can't figure out a better way.
Or cuss me out. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I did that.
I kind of like the idea that you're cussing me out. I can't hear it. That's good.
I also, I'm going to have to go a different way. And I always think that the ekphrasis part is always harder for me to kind of figure out what angle I'm going to approach the poem or approach the piece at. And in terms of like prompt struggles, I think the biggest thing for me is like line syllables, because I try to find meaning within the syllables, and so when we have only like 6 of them, you've got to really jam pack everything for what it's worth. And so the really long words that are like moniker, which are half of the line already. How are you going to make the other half just as meaningful? That's the kind of stuff that gets me. I feel like the words are always like a fun little like extra challenge, because hardly all of them ever get into my poems, but I always kind of push hard for the lines.
I agree with Natalie. I have the hardest time with the ekphrasis part. My first draft of this poem was really just like listing out the things that I was looking at. It didn't have any real meaning to it. It didn't have any real imagery. It didn't really have a purpose. It was just, what am I looking at? What strikes me? And then I had to like slowly move through what I thought was important and what moved me in the piece. And I ended up going with the whole idea of us being in this gallery, seeing a really private moment that, if these figures were alive, they probably wouldn't want us to see. And that's where I took it. And then I went on to moments from that and how she probably felt being stared at like that, and how I might feel being stared at like that, and how I didn't like how she was looking back at us. And it was all very uncomfortable for me because it was such a private moment.
So as some of you, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add that, like despite the prompt that we get, I think a lot of these pieces that we have kind of worked on, like, the poetry kind of writes itself in a way. Adam's kind of like talked to us about that before, and I kind of was like, nah, I don't really believe that. But then when you're really in like the meat of everything, and things are just kind of evolving and like going directions that you never noticed and you never really intended. And it's true that, these pieces really just kind of have written themselves, with Adam's direction, and then kind of where those go emotionally in conjunction with what we've experienced visually.
So these are all really great. I want to add another layer to this question for you guys to think about as maybe some of the other students would like to answer. So Allison asked, question for everyone. Adam put constraints on the poems by cuspid, stippled, etc. But then the artwork was a different kind of constraint. Was one kind harder or more frustrating, or maybe more fun than the other?
The constraints are definitely not easy, to say the least. They do their job. They do what they're intended to do, to make us think outside of the box and outside of the space that we're comfortable in. And they really push us to be better poets and look at these pieces differently and look at how we look at pieces differently. I always have to do a lot of research into the poems or into the paintings and other types of art that we're looking at. But for me, it really is from piece to piece. In this instance, I didn't have as hard of a problem with the prompt as I did with the piece itself. There's been other prompts that we've had in the semester where I struggled a lot more with the prompt. So I think for me personally, it's from piece to piece.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of her and say, like, there's like a lot of like relatability that comes from ekphrasis, and oftentimes, like, to me at least, it feels like if I don't immediately kind of gravitate towards something that I can relate to in a piece, or something that like I can like perceive as being relatable, then I'm automatically drawn to it. But if I can't do that, then the ekphrasis part becomes much more difficult for me than the constraints of the prompt.
So some of you guys have talked a little bit about your the constraints and everything as part of your kind of decision process and what you're writing, and then a few of you and how you were picking the artwork. But maybe some of you can go into like why you chose some of the pieces that you did.
Yeah, I'll speak on mine. I was I was one of the stragglers, and I was one of the last ones to go see the exhibits, and I got to kind of have a one-on-one view of it with Adam. And as I was looking around the telephone exhibit, I had a few that stood out to me more than others in terms of memory and emotion. And when I came to him about that, I walked over to the middle part, and he told me those are the ones I had to go with because if I'm going to extract something from this art into a different form, it has to resemble what I see in it myself. And I think that really drove home the idea of go with what strikes you or creates a memory or creates the content that you can receive from the art, because that's what art is meant to do.
I mean, for me, let's see, can't see myself now. For me, I really liked Shauna's art, and originally I was going to do that, but then this one that was specifically about the transgender service member. I mean, I'm trans, and the whole premise of the art kind of pissed me off, and I I had to say my piece. So that was my thing.
And I have to agree with Shannon that it's what makes you mad that makes it you sort of feel like you have to write about it. And like I wrote mine about the Incredible Hulk comic, and when I looked it up and realized, yeah, the guy dies, it just seemed so pointless to me because it's comics. Why can't you? If you can have a guy who is irradiated by an atom bomb, and instead of dying, he turns into a giant green rage monster, then there's no reason to kill this other character. It's very bury your gays trope, and so the stuff that pisses you off is the stuff that makes you want to write, I think.
I definitely kind of felt something similar. Well, more so in like stuff that makes me feel instead of something that I originally thought I was going to do, because the piece that I ended up writing on was not what I made my decision on. I went into that gallery and I found several things that, and I initially thought would be wonderful to write on, but then whenever it got down to it, I sat down and I looked at those pieces and I said, well, these already speak for themselves. These already speak volumes. I feel like I cannot expand upon this. And I went and I looked through all those gallery pictures that we had, and I looked through what else we had. And I finally found mine, and I found myself getting emotional by something that I completely overlooked while I was in the gallery. And I guess that's kind of what you have to do. You have to find where you feel you fit and what you feel you can talk about.
So how many of you ended up going back and looking at the online exhibition in your writing, or a few of you had, because some of the visits fell just around some foul weather days, unfortunately, so I know a couple of you weren't able to actually come in person. So how was that experience maybe different, or the experience of seeing it online versus in person, and how did that play into your writing?
I'll talk a little bit about that. So I only went to the gallery once because of like my work schedule. There was some kind of conflict. But with the Lucas Blaylock piece that I chose, it doesn't really convey the scale of that painting, I think, if you just see it online. Because that painting is, if I remember right, it's a big painting. It's like a really, really big painting. So like originally I thought I was gonna write about the Shauna McAndrews piece just because of like where I was, like the mood that I was in on that day, and just kind of like the things I've been going through in my personal life. Like it seemed like a logical thing for me to write about Shauna McAndrews. But I ended up just like looking at the Lucas Blaylock painting, and I think that like it just gives you a different emotional experience, to like see it in person, because you can get like really, really close to it as well. And you can also like see yourself in the reflection, I guess, most of the time, and it's just like a different experience, I think. It just creates more like depth, I guess, if that makes sense.
I had a similar issue where I took pictures of the exhibit when I was there, but I did only go to see it once, and then everything else that was online really only has, you know, a couple images. You can't get as close as you want to for me, the paper mache figures, and a lot of them are all the pictures are really from the same angle, and I couldn't get as close to it. You couldn't, when you're in that exhibit room, you can really like smell the paint, you can smell the paper mache, you can see all the dimples, you can see all the ripples, you can see all the time and the effort that went into it and what the artist is really trying to convey. There's so much of art that's really lost on the computer. Sorry, my dog's playing with a toy. There's so much of art that's lost on the computer, and being in person was so much more powerful for it. And I think that that's really what I had to draw on, that memory of being there in person in order to write the poem.
So I have another kind of follow-up question. So a couple of you, actually 3 of you, I think, we've done this once a semester for the last 3 or 4 semesters with Adam's students doing this event. And I know 3 of you at least were, maybe more, were on created poetry for last semester's event. So can you guys... So last semester, for context for the audience, was a food exhibition called A La Carte. It is also still viewable on our website, so you can check it out. But what was the experience like from last semester to this semester for you guys?
Well, for me personally, I was one of the readers. The pieces that I picked were just very, very different. So I picked... oh my gosh, what is her name? Nicodema, I think was her last name.
Yeah, Christina Nicodema.
Yeah, Christina Nicodema. That's the one that I picked. And it was just like this really big, very gory and like decadent painting, I guess, of the raft of Medusa with like an elephant, you know, with like an elephant and all these animals like cannibalizing each other, basically. So that definitely produced a different thing. Whereas, you know, the Lucas Blaylock piece is just pure color, basically, and texture. But I think the thing that ties those two together is that when I write about art personally, I kind of like look at the painting and then make associative leaps, I guess. And my mind kind of just like spirals out, you know? So like from the Nicodema painting of the Raft of Medusa, I talked about, I wrote about like labor camps in China, you know, and about refugees going to Taiwan. And then for this piece, I was looking at like pink. I don't even know what it was. I was looking at pink and I ended up writing about anorexia. So, you know, my brain just kind of goes all over the place. But I think that's kind of the point, is that it invoked more of an emotional response that resonated within the painting, as well as like within the poems, because it sort of became like an aura, I guess, that followed it around. So even though with the poem with the Nicodema painting, although it didn't ultimately make it into the final poem, I felt like it still kind of had the resonance to it. Like I think there was still an elephant in the poem somewhere. So.
Also, I think with the last exhibit, there was like a ready-made theme, whereas with this one, we had different exhibits each had their own theme. So there's a little more give there.
Yeah, and I could say for me personally, like the painting that I chose, or the artwork that I chose last semester for last semester's show, like I looked at it and I immediately like got the story, had the poem in my mind. I knew what I wanted to write about. But for this semester, like I was just staring at the piece, at my pictures that I took of the piece for so long, trying to figure out like, okay, what is the story here? And I really had to challenge myself. So that was very fun.
Great. And so we have one last, oh, sorry, go ahead. I cut someone off.
I was just gonna say that, like, for me also, like, I'm working on my senior thesis right now, so I knew that all of my stuff had to fit within, like, my thesis that's due in, like, 5 days, you know? So.
Thanks, guys. So I have one last question, and several of you guys are answering in the chat, so I'll read the answers as well. But then if maybe one or two of you could elaborate, or if you haven't responded yet, feel free to unmute and respond. So the question from Dr. Chapman is, has writing about art changed how you think about it going forward? I mean, are you likely to walk into a gallery with a different mindset? So Shannon said, maybe not, but I think when I'm stuck, I know I can go to art now. Natalie said, I think I do prime my brain to look at why I'm having certain responses to art. It's about capturing a fleeting feeling of memory. That's really cool, Natalie. Molly says, it definitely, oops, sorry, went away from me. Okay, here it is. It definitely has changed my mindset personally. I feel like it's made me put more value into my perception of art. It makes me think about art deeper than I would have beforehand, because now I'm thinking about how I interpret it and the little niche details in each piece. And then Brooke says, I think it has shifted the experience of art for me. Art is an experience rather than viewing an object in passing. I feel a responsibility to simmer in whatever it is that moves me. I owe it to the artist and myself, even others in the room. And then I love this thread that's going in here. And then Dr. Chapman says, the question was sparked by the misconception or conception that we are supposed to be appreciative, reverent, and I was struck by the kinds of pushbacks folks were feeling, which seems more productive. So does anyone else have anything that they would like to add to what you've already written?
Yeah, I would. I guess the biggest thing, because I was the same way in starting this class, I had that misconception of like, I have to somehow be appreciative and like kind of really like want to like the art. And to be honest, a lot of the art that I've like kind of come across, I had no emotional reaction to it. I was just like, okay, it's art. Or I like had strong negative reactions to it. I was like, why the heck is this considered like something like worth even painting about? Which is, I think they're all like, and then on the other side of the spectrum, there are some things that I'm just like gawking over. And I think that's a really cool thing about art and art critique and like ekphrastic poetry is that you can like, you're allowed, and it's very much valid to hate some things and love other things. And because art is subjective, I mean, that's why art is fun. Because something that you love, someone else could like literally hate. And yeah.
Great, thank you. So thank you everyone for responding and participating in this. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved hearing all of your poems, but then also kind of the responses of where you came from with that. So thank you all. Another round of applause for all of our students. We are at the end of time. Thank you, Adam, for always bringing us this project and letting us enjoy having your students in the galleries and getting to hear their projects. So thank you all again, and we hope to see you at another AEIVA event here soon. Don't forget, Coloring Night is this Thursday. This is kind of the month for UAB student events, so please be sure to check back, and we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you, guys.